Ever feel like you're just drowning in a sea of stuff? Emails and notifications and the news feeds, like everybody's got an opinion. Ugh. It's enough to make you want to run off to a monastery, honestly.
Right.
And guess what? That is exactly where we're headed today, kind of. We are diving into Jay Shetty's Think Like a Monk.
Yes.
But don't worry, you won't need to shave your head.
Not yet.
Not yet, yeah. Or give up your smartphone.
That's right. Shetty's not about strict rules. It's like he's giving you practical techniques to find that inner peace and purpose. And you can do it right in the middle of your crazy modern life.
Okay, so confession time. I was reading your notes about, feeling overwhelmed lately, and I have to say, it really resonated. I catch myself, scrolling through the news sometimes, and I swear my brain just turns to mush.
Ugh.
It's like, how do we even begin to clear the clutter and figure out what really matters?
Well, I think Shetty tackles this head on, actually, with this concept that he calls Seto Darpanamarjanam.
Oh, boy.
Which sounds way more intimidating than it actually is.
Okay, good.
Just imagine, like a dusty old mirror in a storage room.
Yeah.
Right? Buried under years of junk. You can barely make out your reflection.
Yeah.
That's what happens to our minds when we just let those external influences pile up.
Whoa, okay. I can already see the cobwebs, forming in my brain. So how do we actually clean that mirror? Does Shetty have us, chanting while we organize our sock drawer or something?
He's got something even better than sock organization, promise. He has these exercises in the book, and they help you identify where your values actually come from. Because, let's be honest, sometimes we're just running on autopilot, right? We're living with beliefs we inherited from our parents, our friends, even that one influencer we can't stop following online.
Ouch. Okay. That one hits a little too close to home. I can just picture myself in my mom's kitchen right now being told to finish my plate because there are starving children in Africa.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, important lesson, but maybe not the best foundation for my personal food values. So how do we tell the difference between the values that are truly ours and the ones we've just, absorbed from the world around us?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And Shetty has this brilliant way of framing it. He challenges you to look at a few of your core values and ask yourself, if no one else cared about this, would this still matter to me? It's like a gut check for your soul, Okay, I am definitely going to be trying that one later. But before we get too zen, let's talk about the flip side of those values. Negativity. I mean, you mentioned feeling overwhelmed. Honestly, who isn't these days? Yeah, no, right.
There's a whole lot of bad news out there, and it's exhausting.
Absolutely. And Shetty dives into this idea of negativity being contagious. He uses this example of the 3 C's: complaining, comparing, and criticizing. You know how it goes. You hang out with someone who's constantly negative, and all of a sudden you're seeing the world through their grumpy colored glasses.
Oh, yes, I know exactly what you mean. It's like that friend who could just find a dark cloud in every silver lining.
Exactly.
But Shetty doesn't just leave us with that depressing thought, right? He actually gives us tools to deal with it.
Exactly. And one of the most, I think, powerful tools he offers is this idea of awareness. It's so simple, yet so profound.
Okay.
He argues that most of us are caught in this cycle of negativity without even realizing it.
Yeah.
It's like we're sleepwalking through our own minds, letting those 3 C's just run the show.
Okay. That's a little scary, but also kind of empowering, right? Because if we're the ones letting it happen, we can also choose to stop it.
Precisely. He calls this the spot, stop, and swap technique.
Okay.
First, you spot the negativity, whether it's your own thoughts or someone else's. Then you consciously stop yourself from engaging with it. And finally, you swap that negativity for a more positive thought or action.
Okay, I love how actionable that is.
Yeah.
So instead of ruminating on that snarky comment your coworker made, you could choose to focus on something you appreciate about them. Or even just shift your attention to a work task that brings you joy. It's like taking your power back one thought at a time.
Exactly.
So we're swapping negativity for positivity, which sounds amazing in theory, but what about those fears that kind of hold us back from actually living our values? The ones that whisper in your ear, what if it doesn't work out? Or what if you're not good enough?
Fear.
Yeah.
Shetty would probably call that the ultimate dream killer. He actually compares it to a story in the Mahabharata.
Okay.
This epic Indian poem where the hero, Arjuna, is literally paralyzed by fear right before this massive battle. And the thing is, it's not even the fear of dying that gets him. It's the fear of failing, of making the wrong choice.
Okay, so it's not just me then. Public speaking, heights, accidentally replying all to an email chain.
Oh, yeah.
Fear is a universal party crasher, it seems like.
It really is.
But I'm guessing Shetty doesn't just want us to hide under the covers.
Definitely not. He wants us to get curious about our fears. He talks about how he used meditation to figure out the root of some of his own anxieties. And, like, what he discovered totally surprised him.
Oh, tell me more.
Yeah.
What kind of fears did monk in training Shetty have? Was it like fear of running out of saffron for his morning tea?
Well, not quite. He actually shares this anecdote about being terrified of exams as a kid.
Oh.
Which, on the surface seems like a pretty standard fear, right?
Yeah.
But through meditation, he realized it actually stemmed from this deeper fear of disappointing his parents, of not living up to their expectations.
Wow, so it's like those layers of an onion.
Yes.
Except instead of making you cry, it's unlocking all these deep-seated beliefs that might be holding you back.
Exactly.
So how do we figure out what's really lurking beneath the surface of our fears?
Well, Shetty has a whole toolbox of techniques, but one that really spoke to me was this analogy of the Biosphere 2 experiment.
Okay.
So they built this massive enclosed ecosystem back in the 90s,
Right.
and they planted all these trees inside, thinking they were giving them this, like, ideal environment to thrive.
Right. But it totally backfired, didn't it? The
Yeah.
trees ended up being super fragile
Exactly.
because they were shielded from all the wind and the elements.
Yeah, they needed that external pressure to actually grow strong. And it's the same with us. If we try to avoid challenges, we never build the resilience to, like, weather the storms of life,
Okay, I am loving this analogy. So basically, we need a little wind in our lives.
Yeah.
Not the kind that, like, blows your hair into a frenzy, but the kind that helps us grow stronger.
Yes, exactly.
But how do we actually do that? I mean, I'm all for embracing challenges, but some fears are just plain terrifying.
Well, remember how we talked about the contagious nature of negativity? Fear works in a very similar way.
Okay.
The more we focus on it, the bigger it gets.
Yeah.
So Shetty suggests a technique that he calls see the whole story. So instead of getting caught up in the immediate fear of, say, giving a presentation at work, you zoom out and view it as just one chapter in a much larger story.
Ooh, I like that. So it's like, okay, if I totally bomb this presentation, it's not the end of the world. It's just one data point in my career journey.
Exactly. And you can even, like, take it a step further and think back to other challenges you've overcome in the past.
Yeah.
Remember that time you aced that interview or nailed that really difficult project?
Right.
Those experiences are proof that you have the strength and resilience to handle whatever comes your way.
Okay, pep talk over. I'm feeling braver already. But what about those, like, everyday anxieties that pop up? Like you're about to hit send on an important email and your heart starts racing.
Oh, yeah. For those moments, Shetty suggests tapping into the power of your breath.
Okay.
It might sound simple, but when we're anxious, our breath actually becomes really shallow and rapid. And that actually signals to our body that we're in danger.
Right. It's like that whole fight or flight response kicking in.
Exactly. So by consciously slowing down and deepening our breath, we can actually, like, interrupt that stress response.
Right. Yeah.
And tell our body that everything is okay. He even suggests a simple technique. Breathe in for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4.
Okay. I can do that.
Yeah.
And you know what? Just like thinking about it now is already making me feel a little bit calmer.
Right.
It's amazing how such a simple practice can have such a profound impact.
It really is. And it's something you can do anytime, anywhere, to just regain a sense of control when those anxious thoughts start swirling around.
Okay. So we've talked about spotting negativity, swapping it for positivity, and even like befriending our fears. But let's be honest, sometimes those fears are linked to this, like deeper feeling of being lost, of not knowing what our purpose is in the grand scheme of things.
The age-old question, what am I meant to be doing with my life?
Right. And I know from your notes that you're in the middle of a career transition right now.
I am.
So you're probably grappling with this very question yourself.
Every single day.
So what wisdom does Shetty offer for those of us who are feeling a little lost in the woods?
Well, Shetty talks about this concept of dharma, which is essentially our inherent purpose, the thing that we're hardwired to do. But he doesn't believe in this idea of dharma being like this hidden treasure that we have to go on a grand quest to uncover.
Okay, so no Indiana Jones-style adventures through ancient temples required.
Not unless you want to. He believes that our dharma is already within us.
Okay.
It's just a matter of clearing away the clutter to reveal it.
I love that. So it's like our purpose isn't something we find, it's something we uncover.
Exactly. And he uses his own story as an example.
Okay.
He was working in finance, which on paper seemed like the successful career path. but he felt this nagging sense of unfulfillment.
Right.
It wasn't until he spent time at the ashram immersing himself in monk wisdom that he realized his true passion was actually sharing this knowledge with the world.
So he went from Wall Street to monk life to best-selling author and podcast host. That's quite a journey.
It is, and it's a great reminder that our paths aren't always linear. Sometimes it takes a bit of exploration, a bit of trying different things to figure out what truly lights us up.
And that's where I think Shetty's book really shines. He doesn't just talk about Dharma in this kind of abstract way.
Right.
He actually gives you practical tools to help you identify your own unique path.
He does.
One exercise he mentions is called the quadrant of potential.
Yes, and it's all about finding that sweet spot where your skills and passions intercept with something that the world needs. You know, that thing that you're naturally good at, that you could talk about for hours, and that somehow manages to make a difference, even in a small way.
Okay, I'm already feeling inspired. But let's be real. Even when we find our Dharma, it doesn't mean that every day is going to feel like this, blissful meditation retreat.
No, absolutely not. Shetty actually talks about this in the book.
Okay.
He shares this hilarious anecdote from his time at the ashram, where he talks about how he dreaded cleaning the toilets.
Wait, even monks hate cleaning toilets. That's oddly comforting. Right.
It's a great reminder that even when we find work that we're passionate about, there are going to be aspects of it that we don't love.
Right.
But it's about focusing on the bigger picture, focusing on the impact that we're making, and finding joy in the process, even in those, less glamorous moments.
Okay, so we've got our negativity busting techniques. We're embracing challenges like trees in a hurricane.
Yes.
And we're uncovering our Dharma, toilet cleaning and all.
Exactly.
But how do we make sure our egos don't get in the way of actually living this awesome, purpose-driven life?
The ego.
Right.
Shetty would probably say that's the ultimate frenemy. It can be a really powerful motivator, but it can also lead us down some pretty dark paths if we let it run the show.
And it sounds like he's speaking from experience. Mm-hmm. Didn't he have a whole Wall Street phase where he was chasing success and external validation?
He did, and he talks very openly about how that affected him.
Yeah.
And he draws a lot from the Bhagavad Gita, which talks about the difference between the ego and the false ego.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the difference?
So the real ego is our essential self. It's our pure consciousness.
Oh.
It's like that spark of divinity within us. But the false ego is this identity that we create that's based on external factors, our job titles, our possessions, the opinions of others.
So it's like that voice in our head that's constantly comparing, judging, trying to prove its worth.
Exactly. And Shetty argues that the false ego is a lot like a mask.
Okay.
We wear it to kind of protect ourselves, to hide our insecurities, but it also prevents us from connecting authentically with ourselves and with other people.
And I'm guessing that mask can get pretty heavy after a while.
Oh, it can. He even uses the example of Frank Abagnale, the infamous con artist.
Oh, yeah.
He was a master of deception, right? But his entire life was built on this foundation of lies and manipulation.
Right.
He was so busy trying to maintain this image of success and sophistication that he lost sight of who he really was.
And it eventually caught up with him, right? His whole world came crashing down.
Exactly. And it's a stark reminder that the ego, when left unchecked, can actually sabotage our happiness and our success.
So how do we tame the beast? Does Shetty have us chanting affirmations in the mirror while wearing sackcloth and ashes?
Nothing quite so dramatic. Shetty actually believes that true humility is about recognizing that we are all interconnected.
Okay.
That everyone has something valuable to offer and that there's always more to learn.
Okay, so less about self-deprecation and more about recognizing that we're all in this together.
Precisely. And one of the most powerful ways to cultivate humility is through service.
Okay.
Which brings us to the heart of Shetty's message. Seva, or selfless service.
Okay, I'm sensing a theme here. It seems like everything we've talked about, from letting go of negativity to facing our fears to finding our Dharma, it all kind of leads back to this idea of living a life of purpose and service.
Exactly. Shetty really believes that service is the ultimate expression of our Dharma, of our interconnectedness, of our humanity.
And it doesn't have to be anything grand or heroic, right? It's about finding those small, everyday ways to make a difference.
Absolutely. Shetty actually talks about this charity challenge he did during his monk training.
Okay.
Where he and his fellow monks were sent out into the world with nothing but the clothes on their backs, and they had to rely on the kindness of strangers to survive.
Wow, that's intense. What was the purpose of that?
It was such a powerful lesson in humility, in interdependence, in the transformative power of giving and receiving.
I can imagine. It's like suddenly you're not just this individual striving for your own success. You're like part of something much larger than yourself.
Exactly. And you realize that everyone, regardless of their circumstances, has something to give and something to receive.
Okay, so how do we bring this idea of seva into our own lives? I mean, I'm not sure my boss would be too thrilled if I showed up to work tomorrow asking for donations.
Well, Shetty emphasizes that service doesn't have to be this grand gesture.
Okay, good.
It can be as simple as offering a genuine compliment, lending a helping hand to a colleague, or even just being fully present and attentive when someone is talking to you.
So it's about finding those small, everyday opportunities to just, like, a little more kindness and compassion into the world.
Exactly. And the beautiful thing is, those small acts of service not only benefit other people, but they also nourish our own souls.
Okay, I am so here for that. But before we wrap up this, like, service-a-thon, I have to ask, what about gratitude? It seems like every self-help book these days is preaching the power of gratitude. How does Shetty's take on it differ from all the rest?
Well, I think for Shetty, gratitude isn't just this trendy practice. It's really the foundation for a fulfilling life. He actually calls it the mother of all qualities. And he believes that it's the key to unlocking everything from like deeper relationships and greater resilience to inner peace.
So it's not just about like keeping a gratitude journal or listing off the things we're thankful for. It's about really cultivating this genuine sense of appreciation for all aspects of our lives.
Exactly. And one of the most powerful things about gratitude is that it shifts our focus from what we lack to what we already have.
It's like that saying, comparison is the thief of joy. When we're constantly comparing ourselves to others, we totally miss out on the beauty and abundance that already surrounds us.
Precisely. And speaking of comparison, Shetty uses this brilliant analogy to illustrate how an expansive perspective can actually diminish our pain.
Ooh, tell me more. I love a good analogy.
Okay, so imagine you have a handful of salt.
Okay.
If you drop that salt into a glass of water, it's going to taste incredibly salty.
Right, that makes sense.
But if you were to take that same handful of salt and toss it into a lake, would you even notice it?
Probably not. The lake is so vast, the salt would just completely disappear.
Exactly. And that's kind of what Shetty's getting at. Our pain is like the salt.
Okay.
If we focus on it, if we make it our whole world, it's going to consume us.
Right.
But if we expand our perspective, if we cultivate gratitude for all the good in our life, for our loved ones, for our health, the beauty of nature, even just the simple fact that we're alive, that pain starts to feel smaller, less overwhelming.
Okay, I am so adding that salt analogy to my mental toolbox.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, even with the best gratitude practices in the world, relationships can still be messy.
Oh, yeah.
Confusing, and sometimes downright exhausting.
For sure.
You know, the classic, it's not you, it's me kind of scenario.
Absolutely. Relationships are hard work.
Right.
But Shetty argues that they're also one of the most rewarding aspects of the human experience.
So how do we navigate the messy world of relationships with a little more grace, a little more ease?
Well, Shetty actually uses this beautiful analogy to describe strong communities.
Okay.
He compares them to redwood forests.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So redwood trees are fascinating because they actually have very shallow roots.
Really? I thought they'd have these massive root systems to support their size.
Right. It seems counterintuitive. But here's the thing. Their roots intertwine with the roots of other trees, creating this vast interconnected network.
So they're not just these individual trees trying to survive on their own. They're part of this supportive community.
Exactly. And that's actually what allows them to withstand even the strongest storms.
Okay, I love that. So how do we apply that redwood wisdom to our own relationships?
Well, Shetty would say that it's about recognizing that we're not meant to go through life alone.
Yeah.
We need each other. We need to support each other, to lift each other up, and to be there for each other, especially during those inevitable storms.
Okay, I'm feeling all warm and fuzzy inside now.
Good.
But let's be honest, building those redwood strong relationships takes work. It's about more than just showing up, right?
Absolutely. And one of the most important ingredients in any relationship is trust.
And trust isn't something you could just demand. It has to be earned.
Exactly. And it takes time, it takes consistency, and it takes clear communication. Shetty actually talks about these different stages of trust,
right,
starting with basic neutral trust, which is the level of trust we kind of have for a stranger.
Right.
Then there's contractual trust, which is the kind of trust we have with colleagues, acquaintances, based on agreements, expectations.
Right.
And then finally, there's mutual trust, which is like the deepest level of trust that's really reserved for our closest friends and family. And building that kind of deep mutual trust requires vulnerability, right? It's about being willing to let our guard down, to show up authentically, and to, risk getting hurt.
And Shetty reminds us that healthy relationships aren't about constantly striving for perfection.
Yeah.
It's about embracing the messiness and the imperfections that come with being human.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that relationships are always evolving. They require this ongoing effort, this ongoing communication, a willingness to grow together. And speaking of growth, have you ever considered how the concept of dharma, our inherent purpose, might actually show up differently in different relationships?
Ooh, that's an interesting thought. You mean like how our dharma might manifest uniquely in our relationships with like our partners, our friends, our families, even our coworkers?
Exactly. It's about recognizing that each relationship actually calls forth different aspects of who we are. For example, in a romantic relationship, our dharma might manifest as being like a loving and supportive partner. In a friendship, it might show up as being a source of encouragement and inspiration. And in our families, our dharma might be expressed through like acts of service and caregiving.
That's so interesting. So it's not just about finding our like one true purpose. It's about recognizing that our purpose can express itself in a multitude of ways depending on the relationship.
Precisely. And one of the keys to like nurturing those different expressions of our dharma is understanding this concept of love languages.
Okay, I've heard of love languages, but remind me, what are they again?
Essentially, love languages are the different ways that we give and receive love.
Right, like some people feel most loved when you give them gifts, while others crave, like physical touch or words of affirmation.
Exactly. And Shetty emphasizes the importance of understanding our own love languages as well as those of our loved ones.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that what makes you feel loved and appreciated might not be the same thing that resonates with your partner or your best friend or your siblings.
Okay, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So how do we figure out what our own love languages are, and then how do we communicate that to the people in our lives?
Well, Shetty suggests a few different approaches. You can start by just reflecting on your past relationships.
Okay.
Think about the times you felt most loved and appreciated, and then think about the times you felt like taken for granted or misunderstood.
Okay, so it's about like paying attention to those patterns, those moments that made us feel truly seen and cherished.
Exactly. You can also ask yourself, how do I typically express love to others?
Yeah.
Do you tend to like shower your loved ones with gifts? Do you prioritize spending quality time?
Yeah.
Or are you more likely to express your love through, acts of service?
It's about being mindful of our own tendencies and recognizing that those tendencies might not always align with what our loved ones need.
You got it. And once you have a better understanding of your own love language, you can start communicating that to the people in your life.
So it's about having those open and honest conversations about what makes us feel loved and appreciated.
Precisely. And it's about being receptive to hearing the same from our loved ones. It's not always easy, but those conversations can be incredibly transformative for our relationships.
Okay, this is all so insightful, but I have to ask. With all the demands of like modern life, how do we find the time to nurture all of these different relationships?
I know.
Between work, family, friends, trying to squeeze in some semblance of a social life.
Right.
It can feel like there's just never enough time to go around.
It really can. And that's such a common struggle these days. And Shetty acknowledges that, we're all juggling a lot, but he also challenges us to kind of rethink our definition of what quality time really means.
Okay, so it's not just about like the quantity of time we spend with someone, it's about the quality of that time.
Exactly. It's about being fully present, engaged, and attentive when we are with our loved ones, even if it's just for a few minutes.
So putting away our phones during dinner, silencing those notifications, really giving our undivided attention to the person or people right in front of us.
Exactly. It's about creating those like sacred spaces in our day where we can truly connect, listen, and just be present with the people who matter most.
Okay, I love that. It's a great reminder that sometimes the most meaningful connections happen in those small, seemingly insignificant moments. But what about those relationships that feel a little stuck, where you've kind of fallen into a rut, or you're just not sure how to take things to like the next level?
Right. Well, Shetty offers this really helpful framework for deepening our connections called the 6 loving exchanges.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me everything.
Okay, so the 6 exchanges are giving and receiving gifts, words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, physical touch, and shared values.
Okay, so it's basically like a roadmap for expressing love and appreciation in ways that resonate with the people in our lives.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that these exchanges work best when they're reciprocal.
So it's not just about like showering our loved ones with gifts or compliments. It's about being open to receiving those expressions of love and appreciation in return.
Precisely. It's about creating that beautiful balance of giving and receiving, of expressing our love and feeling deeply loved in return.
Okay, I am loving all of this relationship wisdom.
Good.
It's so practical, so actionable, and so relevant to like our everyday lives. But before we get too carried away with like relationship bliss, I have to ask, what about self-care?
Yes.
With all this talk about service and relationships and finding our purpose, it's easy to forget about our own needs.
It is. And that's why you can't pour from an empty cup.
Ooh, I love that.
Right. If we're constantly giving without taking the time to replenish our own energy, we're eventually going to burn out.
So how do we find that balance between serving others and taking care of ourselves?
Well, Shetty emphasizes the importance of establishing a daily self-care routine.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be anything like elaborate or time-consuming. It's really about incorporating small, sustainable practices into our day that nourish our minds, our bodies, and our souls.
Okay, so what kind of practices are we talking about here?
Well, Shetty is a big advocate for meditation.
Of course he is. He is a former monk.
Right. But he emphasizes that meditation doesn't have to be this big, intimidating thing.
Right.
It can be as simple as taking a few minutes each day to just sit in silence, to connect with your breath, and to just observe your thoughts without judgment.
Okay, that feels doable. And it's not just about like clearing our minds, is it?
No.
Meditation has been shown to have all sorts of benefits for our like physical and mental health.
Absolutely. Studies have shown that regular meditation can reduce stress, improve sleep, boost our immune system, even increase our capacity for compassion.
Wow, that's impressive. So meditation is a definite must-add to our self-care toolkit. What else does Shetty recommend?
Well, in addition to meditation, he's a big proponent of movement.
And by movement, we're not necessarily talking about like running marathons or becoming a CrossFit champion.
Right. It's about finding ways to move our bodies that feel good and that we can sustain over time.
Yeah.
Whether it's going for a walk in nature, dancing around your living room, or, trying a yoga class. The key is to find something that you enjoy and that you can stick with.
Okay, so meditation and movement, two excellent pillars for our self-care routine. Anything else?
He also talks about the importance of nurturing our minds.
Okay, so how do we do that? By reading every self-help book ever written.
Well, reading is definitely one way to expand our minds and gain new perspectives.
Yeah.
But it's not the only way. Shetty also encourages us to be lifelong learners.
Okay.
To stay curious and to seek out new experiences.
So like taking a class, learning a new language, traveling to a new place.
Exactly. It's about challenging ourselves to step outside of our comfort zones, to embrace the unknown, and to just never stop learning and growing.
Okay, I am loving this holistic approach to self-care.
Yeah, it's great.
It's not just about like bubble baths and face masks. It's about really nurturing every aspect of who we are.
Exactly. And when we prioritize our own well-being, we're better equipped to show up fully for the people in our lives and to make a meaningful contribution to the world.
This has been such an incredible deep dive.
It has.
We've covered so much ground, from taming our inner critic to cultivating gratitude to building stronger relationships. But before we wrap up, I kind of want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, this idea of Dharma expressing itself uniquely in different relationships.
Absolutely. It's a powerful reminder that our purpose isn't static,
Right.
It's fluid and it's ever evolving.
So how do we actually live that? How do we make sure that we're showing up authentically and purposefully in all areas of our lives?
Well, Shetty suggests a really powerful practice that he calls the evening review.
Okay, tell me more. I love a good evening ritual.
Okay, so instead of just like collapsing into bed after a long day, exhausted and overwhelmed, Shetty actually suggests taking a few minutes to just reflect on your day and to connect with a sense of gratitude.
Okay, so it's like a gratitude journal, but instead of writing, we're just kind of like reflecting internally.
Exactly. But instead of just focusing on, the things you're grateful for, he suggests also asking yourself a few key questions.
Like what?
Well, he recommends starting by asking yourself, what went well today? And really, like, take a moment to celebrate your wins, no matter how small they might seem.
Okay, I love that. It's so easy to just focus on the negative, the things that didn't go according to plan.
But taking the time to acknowledge our accomplishments, even the small ones, can be like incredibly empowering.
Exactly. And then once you've celebrated your wins, Shetty suggests asking yourself, what could I have done better today? But instead of like approaching this question from a place of self-criticism,
Right.
he encourages us to view it as an opportunity for growth and for learning.
So it's not about like beating ourselves up for our mistakes. It's about approaching them with curiosity and a desire to like learn from them.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And then finally, once you've reflected on your day and kind of identified some areas for growth, Shetty suggests setting an intention for the following day.
So like choosing one thing you want to focus on, one quality you want to cultivate, one small action you want to take that will move you closer to your goals.
Exactly. And by ending our day with this sense of intentionality, with this sense of purpose,
Yeah.
we're really setting ourselves up for success, for greater alignment, for a deeper sense of fulfillment. Okay, I am so adding the evening review to my daily routine. It sounds like such a simple yet powerful way to end the day on a positive note and set ourselves up for success the following day.
It really is. It's a beautiful reminder that even small, consistent actions can have a profound impact on our lives.
I completely agree. But before we get too zen, we need to address the elephant in the room.
Oh, and what elephant would that be?
Money, of course.
Ah,
Shetty talks a lot about, purpose and fulfillment, but let's be real, we also live in a material world.
Right.
You need money to survive.
Yeah.
So how do we reconcile these two seemingly contradictory ideas? How do we find work that's both meaningful and financially rewarding?
that's such an important question, and it's something that I think a lot of people really do struggle with these days
Yeah.
because we live in a society that often tells us we have to choose.
Yeah.
You know, it's either following your passion or making a good living.
Right.
But Shetty really believes that it doesn't have to be in either situation.
So how do we find that, sweet spot, that magical intersection of purpose and prosperity?
Well, I think he would say that we need to redefine our definition of wealth.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
He argues that true wealth isn't just about how much money we have in our bank accounts.
Okay.
It's about living a life that's rich in purpose, in connection, in fulfillment.
So it's about finding work that lights us up, that uses our unique skills and talents, that allows us to make a positive contribution to the world.
Exactly. And here's the thing. When we're aligned with our purpose, when we're doing work that feels meaningful and fulfilling, the money often follows.
So it's not about chasing the money, it's about chasing our dharma
Yes,
and trusting that the abundance will kind of flow from there.
precisely. And it's about recognizing that true wealth encompasses so much more than just material possessions. It's about our health, our relationships, our connection to something greater than ourselves, our ability to live a life that's aligned with our values.
Okay, I am loving this expanded definition of wealth. It's not about keeping up with the Joneses. It's about creating a life that feels rich and meaningful from the inside out.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that true abundance isn't about having it all. It's about appreciating what we already have and then using our resources, both, material and intangible, to make a positive impact on the world.
This is such a refreshing perspective.
Yeah.
I feel like so often we're just conditioned to believe that happiness is something we have to chase.
Right.
Something that's always just out of reach. But Shetty's message is so empowering because it reminds us that we already have everything we need
We do.
to live this fulfilling and meaningful life.
Absolutely.
It's really incredible. Well, this has been an incredible conversation.
It has.
We've learned so much from Think Like a Monk. Any final words of wisdom before we wrap things up?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that you don't have to be a monk to think like one. We all have this inner monk within us, this capacity for peace, for purpose, for wisdom. It's just a matter of quieting the noise of the outside world.
Yeah.
And tuning in to that inner voice.
I love that. It's about remembering who we truly are,
Exact.
living from that place of authenticity.
Yes.
Well, this has been such a treat. Thank you for diving deep with us into Think Like a Monk.
This is my pleasure.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and those hearts open.